It's time for game night. A look at all of the high school football games set for this weekend across the central Susquehanna Valley.
Hello and welcome to week 9 of our Game Night High School Football Podcast. I'm Daily Item Sports Editor Kurt Ritzman. I'm joined by football writer Todd Hummel.
I don't know if I could started this thing with a fake or smile when you're doing your intro.
It's week 9. You can't manage a real smile yet?
No, I'm tired, dude.
Only 7 weeks left.
Yeah, how about it? Well, there's less and less teams as that goes on,
sure.
At least.
So what stuck out to you from week 8? I thought there were some pretty interesting results.
Southern Columbia is still really good. Though that first quarter score was really interesting. That sent a ripple through the crowd at Christy Mathewson when it was still 0-0. And anybody that saw the video from that saw the interest in that game with all the people there. And, that was the first thing, the refs asked, too, was, what's going on out there if it's 0-0? Jersey Shore's pretty darn good. They were a win away with beating Central Mountain next week from claiming the Division I title for the first time, or back-to-back for the first time in school history.
Wow.
This really is a different kind of Jersey Shore team where they've made their living, being real balanced and running the ball a lot. And this year, they're really relying on Tanner Lorson. They really didn't really feel like they needed to establish the run until the second half. He had almost 300 yards passing in the first half, threw for 4 touchdowns in the game. They don't have that one kid that they rely on. Stanton Westland leads them in touchdown catches. I think it's 8. But they just, between him and Caden Hess and, Dawson Seacrest out of the backfield, they hit a tight end down the middle of the field once or twice, too. There's just 4 or 5 kids that Lorson has to choose from on the outside that makes them, a tough cover. And, we say this a lot about Southern Columbia, but I think, with the way the way they've beaten up teams like Wyoming area and Jersey Shore, it was what makes their run so impressive because, that Jersey Shore front line had its way on both sides of the ball with Lewisburg. Sacked Nick Shedleski 8 times last week.
Wow.
Really had no time to throw the ball that much. But in the Green Dragons' defense, they probably felt they were in that game for most of the first half.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to hit some big plays. They started the game with a double pass with Ethan Spalding hitting Jack Landis down the field, and then scored a long touchdown on a middle screen. And that's the only thing they could really hit on Jersey Shore was the long plays. And I think the other thing that sticks out is that Danville Shamokin game last week.
Sure.
Shamokin really bounced back and was able to, establish the run for the first time in almost a month. And man, the 2 games I've watched Joey Mosser play on TV, he has been spectacular. And if you've watched him play basketball and the way he rebounds at his size, that's also the way he plays receiver. He just goes up and gets the ball. And if you watched, I think Rob had a picture of it. There's a play in the second half where Joey and Ian Persing both go up for a ball. It seems like they're both 10 feet off the ground. And, he's such a good athlete, and that really helps them on the outside. And, it feels like, if they can, play well this week, get a win against Schick, and then play well next week in that game that they wish they'd hoped they'd win, I guess, this year again. But I think this is a Shamokin team that, if they can get out of that 8th seed and get away from Montoursville in 3A, might be able to make some noise in the playoffs.
How about Warrior Run? 14-10 win over Central Columbia. Used their defense, probably their best defensive performance of the year to move to 5-3.
And they're on pace. It's a key game this week with another 5-3 team, Loyalsock, who's the 2 seed. And the Blue Jays the Defenders have put themselves in a position for a home playoff game. Mm-hmm. And really, I really thought that Mifflinburg game could cost them in the way they played in the middle of the season. But it really seems that, the bouncing back against Bloomsburg and Hughesville have really returned the confidence. And, they got a good shot if they beat Loyalsock and votes. They got a good shot to have their best season in at least 15 years, if they go 7-3.
Okay, well, that was our look back at Week 8. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, GDK Development, and then we'll hop into our 11 Week 9 games.
GDK Development of Shamokin is a proud supporter of all local and youth sports. The Welsh family has been in business for 37 years and thanks you for supporting them and their local businesses, including Bruiser Sports Grill in Cole Township and the Lewisburg and Sunbury Burger King restaurants. Again, thank you for 37 years of support and good luck area athletes and teams this sports season from the Welsh family and GDK Development of Shamokin.
Okay, let's start in with a big game. Sure, for bragging rights, it doesn't really have much effect on playoffs or hack titles, but 8-0 Southern Columbia headed to 8-0 Montoursville. That's where you're headed Friday night.
Yeah, they're expecting another big crowd. Anybody that's been to Montoursville, a big crowd and their parking situation does not go well together. So, like Wyoming area, get there early. We'll get this out of the way early. I think Southern's going to roll in this one again. But, if any of these teams in Southern's regular season schedule has a chance to do something against these Tigers, it's the Warriors. They probably have the only other line that has a chance to match up with Southern up front. Now, obviously, the big thing is can their defense stop the Southern offense, which... No, probably not. But the depth of Montoursville's weapons should test this Southern Columbia defense as well. They have, they can get the ball out to Jackson Delina and Logan Ott on the outside, run Logan Ott, Paluzzi. I can't think of the kick returner now, but he had a long kick return last week. But they have a variety of weapons on the outside, so that's probably going to be the most interesting matchup in that game. Is through this run, it's been hard for teams to do much with Southern Columbia's defense, and they have enough on the outside that this could be a test for a while for the Tigers defense. And if any team has given Southern Columbia problems in this run over this course, it's been Montoursville. Chris Nagy's nightmare game of the district, the 55-50 district championship game a couple years ago. The last team to beat Southern Columbia in the district playoffs is Montoursville as well. Wow. And that was, good heavens, that was a long time ago. It was like 100. I think Julian Gage and those guys were in 7th grade.
Wow.
So it's 6 years ago. It's the year before the first state title in this run when Southern got really banged up before that game. So the Montoursville, I don't think Montoursville's going to come in this as intimidated as some of these other teams. I think Montoursville's going in this with a kind of like Mount Carmel that we feel we're just this good. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're going to be doing the talking in the newspapers either that Mount Carmel did. They had Southern fired up at that beginning of that game, and it was 14-0 so fast. But coming off a big game last week, the Tigers have really had to be ready for last week, and I think that's going to help this week when they're not coming off of 4 straight 56-0 games where they didn't have to play into the second half.
Yeah, last week was only 42-0.
It was only 42. Well, hey man, those Wyoming area kids are going to go look back on that goal line stand in the first quarter, and because I had to laugh after the Lewisburg game. I asked Coach Gravish about bouncing back from the Southern loss, and he was a little insulted that the fans were so excited up at Jersey Shore because they scored 2 touchdowns on them, and they were the first to score in the first team defense. To paraphrase him, he's like, they acted like we won the game. We lost the game. We lost the game. And that's kind of the way. As good as the Southern team is, you got to take your positives where you can if you're an opponent.
My favorite thing from the Southern game last week was Gage played 2 defensive snaps and got a sack on both of them.
That sounds like a day. You can take out the Kroll kid who's who's a darn good linebacker, darn good high school linebacker on his own, and throw in another Division I kid, just in case.
Let's move on to one of our 2 matchups of 5 and 3 teams in Class 3A. There's 4 of them right now. There's seeds 2 through 5. We got Central Columbia coming off that loss to Warrior Run, headed to Lewisburg on Friday night.
Yeah, the Blue Jays were a team that were playing real well. I don't know if they got caught looking ahead to these last 2 weeks where they play their rival Bloomsburg and plus this Lewisburg game this week. And I don't really know who's going to win this game. I think this. I will pick Lewisburg because they were at home. Central handled them up at Central in the regular season last year, but Lewisburg bounced back to beat them in the district playoffs, and that was, I'm sure the Green Dragons will admit that performance in the regular season was their worst of the season last year, probably. And I think, as we get longer away from Max Moyers' injury, I think this offense is gonna figure out a couple more ways to score. I think they match up a little better up front with Central Columbia when they did Jersey Shore. That will certainly help. Between Ethan Spalding, Ethan Dominic, Jack Landis on the outside, Simeon Byler, they have some weapons. It's just, they have to get used to these new roles. And, now the big thing is to develop some consistency this week instead of just big plays, put together a drive, and, again, like I said in the open that they could not do that last week. And it's going to be interesting to see, the Central Columbia outgained Warrior Run last week, and the defenders really didn't do much offensively. They took advantage of, some Blue Jays mistakes, and Riley Dalbert is a pretty darn good football player, obviously. And so I would like to see, I just want to see how Lewisburg matches up with another good defense this week.
Speaking of that, Central's the current 3 seed and Lewisburg's the current 4 seed. Headed up the road a little bit, we got Loyal Sock at Warrior Run. Loyal Sock's 2 and Warrior Run's 5 right now, so a home playoff game would be great for the defenders.
Yeah, it would be, and this will obviously vault them into the top 4 if they beat the 2 seed. Loyal Sock is a I think I talked a little bit about this last week with when I saw them with Mifflinburg. There's obviously talent there. Reese Watkins is a great receiver. Chase Kavanaugh can get the ball downfield and is a former running back, so you have to be aware with him on the ground. But they don't seem to be very consistent. And they beat up a Milton last week. Took them to the fourth quarter to put away an undermanned Mifflinburg team. I think Warrior Run has a real good shot in this one. The biggest thing for them is going to be defend Watkins downfield and not let them get some of those big plays that they've gotten when Loyal Sock has been successful. Defenders, on the other hand, obviously, I think they probably want to get that running game going again. That's their biggest struggle last week. If they can't run the ball, it really affects them passing the ball. I think Remington was 3 of 12 last week, 3 of 11. So I think that with that running game, that takes a little bit of pressure off of him, and they're able to get Dalbert more involved in the passing game. So I think Warrior Run gets this one. Either Central Lewisburg or Loyal Sock Warrior Run is probably going to be the tightest game of the week, I think. Maybe.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not?
Let's go to a game. We talked about Shamokin with their good performance against Danville last week. Headed to 2-6 Shikellamy. The Braves now have 2 wins in their last 3 games, coming off a 35-7 win over Holy Redeemer. They led 35-0 at halftime. I guess, I think both teams have to be feeling pretty good coming off those wins last week. And,
the Braves have put themselves, looks like the Braves have put themselves into the district playoffs.
They're
think
currently the 4 seed.
The 4 seed, I'm thinking they should beat Milton next week. I think this is a key game. They want to, they're able to get this one. They probably should get past Midwest for the 3 seed, and maybe, I don't know who you want, though, if you're Midwest and Schick. I don't think Selinsgrove.
You want Selinsgrove or Jersey Shore? Yeah. Neither sound like a lot of fun to go on the road and play in the first round.
No, but I think Schick would like another shot at their rival just with the way that first half went. But I think the big thing for the Braves is I think they match up well up front with Shamokin. I think I think defensively, they should do a pretty good job against the running game. What it's going to come down to is in the secondary, and can they stop Matt Chicatano and Mosser in the on the outside. If Shamokin's able to hit some big plays, I think Schick will have some problems. Since, what are we at? 4th week since the Central Mountain game for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the improvement in Drew Balestrini is obvious. I think the lights finally clicked for him at quarterback, and that's given the Braves a lot of balance in that offense over the last 3 weeks, where they've been able to. I think his lowest passing numbers is 142 yards in that 4-week span, and that's really helped that Braves offense. I'm trying to think. They have almost 112 points in the last 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I think they might not have, be from the first week last season till before that Central Mountain game. I don't think they had 112 points. So you can tell how much that offense has improved, and that's been huge for them over this past 3 weeks.
Like 50, 30, and 35?
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Not bad at all.
I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say that this is the fastest game on Friday night that does not end in the mercy rule.
I think that's a fair guess. I think both teams, even if Shamokin's throwing the ball, Shamokin still wants to run the ball 30 times a game, and I don't think there's been a game this year yet that Schick hasn't run the ball 30 times. So I think that's probably a good bet.
On the other side of that game was Danville, which suffered, I think, its third straight loss to drop to 4-4.
Yes.
And they're headed to 5-3 Selinsgrove, where things probably aren't going to be easier for the Ironmen on Friday night.
No, and the Ironmen's big issue has been blocking up, protecting KJ Riley, and of course Selinsgrove's going to attack that with that 3-5 defense where they like to, stunt and bring people from different spots. 1+ for that young Danville offensive line. This, the Danville plays kind of the same type of defense, so at least they've been exposed to it a little bit. And this, Danville, watching that game on TV, Danville was able to move the ball at times between the 20s. It's just, they were hurt by turnovers. Sacks took them out. Some sacks took them out of scoring position, or stymied some drives that they put together. They're just gonna have to find out some way. They're athletes on the outside, and quarterback KJ Riley match up with anyone. It's just a matter of, can the offensive line give those guys enough time to do some things. And for the Seals, they've been relying on that defense. It seems like, as the season goes on, that the offense is getting better. Danny Schock and Josh Nyland, both played real well throwing the ball last week. And the Seals have really started to spread the ball around in the running game. Dean Hollenbach had 102 yards. Schock carried the ball 10 times. Plus Nate Schoen back there too. So that's really allowed them to develop some more weapons on that offense and kind of get out that schneid that they were in early in the season.
Selinsgrove probably didn't have its best defensive game last week, giving up 21 to Central Mountain. I feel like that's got to give the Wildcats, right? Central Mountain Wildcats.
No, yeah, I was looking at the game because it's Wildcats versus Wildcats, so you can't go Nick game.
I think that's got to give Central Mountain some confidence. I mean, despite being 8-0, they just
0-8, buddy.
0-8. They scored 3 touchdowns against a pretty good Selinsgrove team. They get 4-4 Mifflinburg, who has to make the long trip to Mill Hall this week.
Speaking of teams that are struggling right now, Mifflinburg's dropped 4 straight. We talked about as long as they'd stay healthy, they were going to be a pretty good team, and they're not healthy right now. We'll see if Riley Stahl comes back. He did not play last week. Mason Breed returned. Andrew Deal returned last week. Gary DeGroat did not play, so it looks like the quarterback is down. And I honestly, I think that hurts them more on the defensive end,
Sure.
in that secondary. And that's where Central Mountain's going to attack you, and that's where Central Mountain has attacked you for the last 5 years. They're going to want to throw the ball as much as possible because they really struggle running the ball. I think almost called him Justin Neff, and that's the kid that's walking on at Penn State. That's the old quarterback. Zane Probst threw for over 300 yards last week against the Seals, and if they can contain him and Rocco Stark on the outside, I think Mifflinburg should get this one pretty easily. And they really need this one to snap that losing streak. And Little Brown Jug should be fun next week too.
Yeah.
Mifflinburg and Lewisburg. I was just thinking of that, looking at that.
Another 4-4 team headed to an 0-8 team. South Williamsport going to Milton. Milton scored 14 last week against Lowestoft.
Season high.
Is that something?
It is, and this isn't a one of those South Williamsport hammers with Raggalone or where they've been real tough. They obviously should win this game, but I think Milton stays in this one for a while. I think they're able to they've been running the ball a little better, and they've really gone down the field a lot to their 2 long touchdowns the last 2 weeks have been to Kenley Caputo. And, Ethan Rao seems to be developing into the quarterback that they wanted. On the other hand, they're going to have to stop a pretty tough running game and a pretty angry team that is lost to Bloomsburg and Mount Carmel over the last 3 weeks, but I don't want to make the assumption that it's 3 straight losses because I can't remember what game came in the middle there. But yeah, it's a team that got beat up last week by Mount Carmel. Again, I think Milton gets this one, but I think it might take a little bit for South Williamsport just to bounce back from the physicality of their last couple of weeks.
Then the other hack game we have this week could be a playoff preview. Right now it's the 3 seed in 2A hosting the 6 seed in 2A. 3-5 Bloomsburg, we just mentioned, headed to 6-2 Mount Carmel.
Yeah, and Bloomsburg coming off a week of controversy last week, where it had no problems with winless Hughesville and was able to pick up a win on homecoming. Obviously, this Mount Carmel team is a whole different ball game than Hughesville. For this stretch for Mount Carmel since Mifflinburg was undefeated going into that game. Since then, Mount Carmel has had not played any real good team. Maybe South Williamsport going in there at 4-3, but has really taken advantage of that to pound some teams into submission. I think they had 13 ball carriers last week in the game against South Williamsport, and got a note this week that's actually the school record for the amount of ball carriers in the game. Freshman Jacob Zarski scored his first career touchdown. So, everybody got in for the Red Tornadoes. I think that's another type of game for them this week. And, I think the impressive part is you look at their team numbers and they've rolled up some impressive numbers, but there's not one kid this year that you can really concentrate on. John Ayers has, had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and they don't have that one big hammer, but, they've been spreading the ball around to Shane Widener and Noah Burkowski in the running game. Logan Willis and Jack Chapman in the passing game, and sprinkling in some various other kids at times. It's really proven to be a tough cover for teams, and I think Bloomsburg probably struggles in this one with them again.
Last week, Midwest snapped a losing streak, barely. They had 34-13 and held on for a 34-32 win up at Athens.
Had to stop a 2-point conversion with less than a minute left to hang on.
They're 3-5. They're at home again. They've got Greater Latrobe, also 3-5, coming down from Latrobe, which I have no idea where it is.
Come on, man. They better be bringing some Rolling Rock. That's where Rolling Rock was made. Rolling Rock was made. That might mean I have a problem, but yeah. The big thing for the Mustangs, tried to look up some things quick before we came in here in Greater Latrobe. There's not much online about them at 3-5. If they can throw the ball, they'll cause the Mustangs some problems. I think that's almost 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns at the last 3 weeks. That's been a big struggle for them. And that's how Athens did it last week too. Was able to throw the ball. The Athens kid receiver had 170 yards and 3 touchdowns or something like that. And
that's not a bad day.
Not a bad day at all. And it's interesting to see how these I don't know how Greater Latrobe could throw the ball, but Tunkhannock is a team that spreads the ball out and wants to throw the ball all over the place next week too. So if they want a shot at that that 3 seed and to jump Shikellamy, that's something they're going to have to solve. I think they will. They're kind of young. They were kind of young out there. Did have an interception last week. But, that's probably – if Midwest line can probably match up against most teams around here, it's just a matter if they can figure out that pass defense and get some stops. Because, go back to the Springfield Township game, week 3 or week 4 or whatever that is, and that's how they hurt the Mustangs too, was with a passing game as well and the quarterback run. So just look for that, and hopefully also – if you're heading out to West Snyder, that game's a 7:30 kick and not a 7 o'clock kick either. I'm assuming that gives them Greater Latrobe a little bit more of a time to come from the Pittsburgh area on a Friday afternoon.
Heading over to the Tri-Valley League, Lion Mountain last week hung tough with Pine Grove, who has a chance to win the TVL title if they can beat Upper Dauphin on Friday night. But the Eagles lost 14-6. They're 3-5, headed to 3-5 Tri-Valley, trying to get a win and make sure to avoid Southern Columbia at least in the first round. I'm sure they'd like to avoid Mount Carmel too.
Yeah, I don't think either of those are great matchups for the Eagles. I feel like this Lime Mountain team is talented. They've had some bad luck. Things, and that Pine Grove team is real good at running the football and just overwhelmed them. Finally got that second drive late in the fourth quarter last week. We'll see what they want to do at quarterback. It seems like they're wavering again between Jacob Feast and Evan Erb. Feast ran for 160 yards last week. He's really emerging as a threat running the ball. But Herb is the better passer, and it kind of, it limits them when he's at court. I imagine that's why they're kind of wavering between the two, because Feast is a running back as well. I think they should get this one over at Higgins, but this is a Bulldogs team that struggled early in the season, but seems to be playing better. But in defense, that's wins over Millersburg and Halifax the last 2 weeks too. So we'll see how much they have improved when Lime Mountain heads over there. By the way, if you're going over, great place to watch a game.
Higgins?
Yeah, I love going to Tri-Valley. Used to be better when it was Saturday afternoon in between the trees, but hey, can't go. I guess I shouldn't complain.
Yeah. Our last game as of Wednesday at 5:30 or whenever we're filming this is
I think they would have announced it by now.
on Millersburg 2-6, coming off a forfeit loss last week. Headed to 3-5 Juniata. Juniata, famous for their big comeback over Lime Mountain a couple weeks ago.
I think I was going to say I think the Indians get this one, but
I bet you're right.
I bet I nailed it. But I think Juniata gets this one. I'm just interested to see how Millersburg plays in this one. A week off. Looked like it was a really fun scene down there for homecoming with no football games. Saw some of that on
there was a football game.
Well, the flag football game, but yes, saw some of that on the Harrisburg TV stations where it seemed like they had a great crowd for that, and everybody seemed like they had a lot of fun. And oddly enough, the rest of Class A and District 3 is really struggling. Halifax still hasn't won. Fairfield still hasn't won a game, and Millersburg, despite a forfeit, is still your number one seed in the District 3 Class A playoffs. And it'll be interesting to see what their decision is with that. If they're that beat up, if they want to play an extra week or an extra 2 weeks, or they just. And I can't imagine an 0-10 Halifax team that hasn't been close to anybody is going to want to play.
Sure.
Maybe there just won't be a District 3 Class A representative, and the District 4 champion gets a bye. I'd like to see how the PIAA would handle something like that.
I'd like to just see Millersburg roll off a couple wins, get a break, and go to states. And their last year as a team.
They play Juniata and then Williamsgrove or Williams Valley. I don't think they're ending the season with a couple wins.
Last regular season game in Millersburg football history, biggest upset in 20 years. Who knows?
There you go. Good guess. Probably not going to happen, but good guess.
That's our look at Week 9 games. Make sure to check out Friday's Daily Item, where we'll have the game night. We'll have previews of all the games, Todd's pick and columns. Follow along Friday night on the internet at dailyitem.com with our live blog and our live scoreboard. Saturday, we'll have coverage of all the games. And then Monday, we'll have take a look back at the weekend in our high school football notebook. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week for final week of the regular season, Week 10.
See ya.
GDK Development of Shamokin is a proud supporter of all local and youth sports. The Welsh family has been in business for 37 years and thanks you for supporting them and their local businesses, including Bruiser Sports Grill in Cole Township and the Lewisburg and Sunbury Burger King restaurants. Again, thank you for 37 years of support and good luck area athletes and teams this sports season from the Welsh family and GDK Development of Shamokin.